I try not to engage in the stupidity and the AI hype that comes from social media, but occasionally it gets to me and I realize the whole AI world has gone completely mad. And I'm not talking about the technology. I actually think the technology is genuinely great. I actually mean the people around it, the investors, the analysts, and the thought leaders who confidently declare that AI agents are about to eliminate accountants, lawyers, and analysts. And I'm sitting there thinking, have any of these people actually worked in a real business? Have they ever tried to close a month end or reconciled an intercompany account across legal entities in multiple currencies with two ERPs that don't talk to each other? And yet, people who consume their information from social media and marketing spin, it just seems also obvious that AI agents are going to be able to do all this stuff. So, what's going on here? What we're watching here now is the Dunning-Kruger effect playing out in an industrial scale. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge in a domain dramatically overestimate their competence in that domain. In other words, the less you know, the more confident you are. And the more you know, the more you realize how complex things really are. And that's exactly what's happening with AI and professional services. You've got tech investors who look at all these professionals working in companies and just assume that some vibe coded AI agent will replace decades of lived experience. They see jobs as a series of tasks which have a simple set of instructions. And if you can chain them together, you get someone's entire job. So when it comes to professional roles, the challenges become a whole lot bigger. For example, when I was leading analytics teams, I'd have to prepare a set of internal accounts and a set of statutory accounts. The rules between them were slightly different. And of course, the people who make these wild claims about agents have no understanding about how to deal with an auditor pushing back on a revenue recognition treatment. But yet, you've got the people out there saying that with absolute certainty that AI agents will replace accountants within 5 years. That's not insight, it's ignorance. So let me give you another analogy which should make this obvious. We've been talking about self-driving cars for over a decade, and there's been billions and billions of dollars spent in investment. And where are we? Well, we have some self-driving cars that work in some places. Waymo works great in parts of Phoenix, Arizona, with flat roads, wide lanes, and predictable grid layout. And of course, sunny weather 300 days a year. But try rolling that out in Mumbai or on the M1 highway on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend in the rain. There are multitudes of variables that must be weighed up and processed simultaneously. Skills are created by doing the things until they become automatic, not by downloading them from a GitHub repository. The proposition falls apart because driving isn't just one task. It's thousands of micro tasks happening simultaneously and in an environment that's constantly changing in unpredictable ways. A self-driving car has to only do one thing, drive from A to B on a road, and that's it. Yet after decades and hundreds of billions of dollars, it still can't do that reliably in all conditions. So explain to me, how is an AI agent going to replace an accountant or a lawyer or a white-collar professional whose job spans financial reporting, regulatory compliance, tax law, business advisory, stakeholder management, professional judgment calls, and navigating all sorts of ambiguity that would make a large language model hallucinate themselves into a coma? And yet the people making these claims aren't even aware of the kind of judgment that's required. The Dunning-Kruger effect means that when people see a demo, they see an agent booking a meeting or drafting an email or pulling some numbers from a spreadsheet, they make this enormous logical leap. Well, if it can do that, it can obviously do everything. But no, it can't. It's like watching a self-driving car navigate a car park and concluding it's ready to drive the Dakar Rally. The gap between a demo and production environment is enormous. The gap between handling a clean, well-structured task and handling the kind of messy, ambiguous, exception-riddled reality of professional work is another thing entirely. And to me, there's no doubt that the Dunning-Kruger effect has a massive part to play in this AI hype cycle. In fact, I've had meetings with investors who have torn strips off me because I don't buy into the agent narrative. But when people have already bought in on a technology, it's very hard for them to go against it now. And it's much easier to push back on the people and say that they just don't understand. Look, AI is incredibly useful. I live and breathe it, and I'm building a company around it. But I'm building it around what AI actually does well based on my experience of using it for 10 years. I've put the hard work in. I've built models and trained models from scratch. I didn't just download an open source project from GitHub and proclaim the end of the world. So this really toxic combination of Dunning-Kruger and marketing means you've got people who don't understand the work making confident predictions about the future, funded by people who don't understand the work. The hype cycle and media cycle rewards boldness over accuracy. Look, I've spent 30 years in corporate roles. I've worked in senior roles in large multinationals. I've seen and heard every wave of technology promise to revolutionize the back office. First, the ERP was going to do it. Then it was going to be the cloud. And then it was RPA. And now agents are going to do it. And every single time, the technology has delivered value, but nothing like of the scale it was promised. And that's because the people making the promises didn't understand the problem. They understood the technology just enough to be dangerous, but not the domain enough at all to be useful. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. And when you combine that with a multi-million-dollar marketing machine, you can just see how this ends in tears. So look, I'd really love for you to share your thoughts and comments below, even if you disagree with me. I am still open to change my mind. And I do read and respond to every comment, but it may take me some time. So again, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.